And welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we have a really interesting recipe that we found through excellent food YouTuber Joshua Weissman, which is a TikTok food hack for fermented French fries. Now before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that we have an affiliate link with Chef's Temp. If you need a kitchen thermometer or meat probe, please check out the link in the description below and use code LOVEYOURFOOD on checkout for 15% off your order. In the meantime, here's the method for these fermented fries. So we've got some potatoes, a little bit of mustard seed and some black pepper, some salt, and some water. So we're also going to need some oil for deep frying these later. Now we're going to start by making a brine. So this is sort of a fermentation of these French fries. We're going to be adding enough water in here to make a brine. The details of the brine are going to be in the description below with all of the amounts of everything we need. And we just want to heat this up to make sure it's all sterilized and everything. So we're just going to make sure that that comes up to the boil. And we're going to turn that off and let that cool down until just above room temperature. It just needs to be tepid before we use it. In the meantime, we're going to wash our potatoes, but not really scrub them and certainly not peel them because we do want the lactobacilli on the outside. We want to ferment these naturally. Now, if you want, you can kickstart these with something that's already fermented. We're just going to let them ferment naturally. So we're going to cut them into fries. And you may need some water to rinse your knife off just to get the starch off. And fermenting them is going to do a couple of things. One of those things is it's going to eat up some of the sugar in the outside of the French fries, in these potatoes, which is going to change how they brown and how they cook in the oil. So here you go. We've got them all in the jar, and you want to fit them in there as tight as possible so that they don't float. We're going to add in our spices, so that little bit of pepper and mustard seed, just to add a little bit of flavor. And then we're going to add in our now tepid room temperature brine. And you want to cover this, but you don't want to cover it tightly because it's going to ferment. It's going to produce a lot of gas. And you want to make sure there's as few gaps as possible. You don't want air bubbles in there. So, give it a tap, squish things around, make sure they're all in there really nice and tight. And then you want to cover it, but not all the way. You don't want to squeeze that. You don't want to really wrench that lid on there. And we're going to leave this at room temperature for a few days. Now, you may need to, over the course of those days, skim some of the scum off the top. This is a living thing. It is fermenting in there. And you might not enjoy the smell of the fermenting all that much. It's a pretty strong smell. But after it's fermented for a couple of days at room temperature, or a few longer days in the fridge, and again, you just make sure you want to keep it covered, but not just wrenched on there. We're going to remove all of the brine, and then we're going to rinse these a couple of times, and then we're going to take them out into a big bowl here, rinse them out. We're going to get rid of all the spices and the pepper and mustard seed and everything. And once they're rinsed off, because they are fermented and because it's fermented potato, there was a fairly strong odor in the water, but once they were rinsed, they just smelled like potato. They smelled just fine. Now, this uses up some of the sugars in the potato and the starches on the surface. So these are going to cook a little differently. They're not going to brown very much because the sugars are what really, you get that Maillard reaction with the sugars. Those are what really gives it that browning on the outside. So these are going to they're going to look a little pale, but they end up being incredibly crispy and quite fluffy on the inside. Now, this method is a twice cooked method, so the first time we're going to put these in the fryer at a lower temperature, just until they're basically cooked through. And this is sort of to reduce the moisture content in there, and you can see there's no color on them at all. And we're going to chill these for a little while, as long as overnight, depending on how long you want to chill them for. So we're going to put these into one of our reusable Ziplocs here. And these are going to go, and we're just going to get these to chill. And what chilling does is it's going to make all of the starches in there kind of come together, and they're going to emulsify sort of together. And that will make them really nice and fluffy on this second cook. So this second cook is going to be at a higher temperature. Now, normally with French fries, that second cook is going to make them turn quite dark and golden. Now, because we've used so much of that sugar in the fermentation, it's not going to get golden. It's going to stay pretty pale. You can see a little bit of color on them, but honestly, they don't get very dark. You do want to salt them as soon as they come out of the oil and while they're still hot though. And then you just want to let them, get to handleable temperature, and they are incredibly crispy. They came out super, super nice. The flavor was excellent. They tasted really, really good. The potato was very, it was very potatoey, for lack of a better word. They were delicious. We served them with burgers. They were fantastic, and we hope you'll give this one a try. If you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. We'd like to thank our patrons over on Patreon. If you'd like to support us there and help us keep doing this, I'll put a link for that in the description below. And remember to love your food.